What could make a heavenly being desire something human? Not worship, not obedience, not prayer rising from earth to heaven. Something far more dangerous. Flesh, beauty, nearness. The ancient story is disturbing because it does not begin with war or rebellion in the obvious sense. It begins with desire, with beings not made for human limits, looking down and wanting what belonged to another order of creation. That is what makes this fall so terrifying. Not hatred of God, attraction to what was never meant to be possessed. Because some boundaries are not crossed through violence first. They are crossed through fascination. And once desire enters where reverence should have remained, the point of no return may already be closer than anyone understands. The first movement of ruin is often not rage. It is admiration that refuses to remain pure. It is the moment wonder stops kneeling and starts reaching. The ancient shock of this story is not only that angels fell, it is why they fell. They did not simply rebel in abstraction. They became drawn toward embodiment, toward beauty in mortal form, toward the mystery of human life, human flesh, human intimacy. This is what makes the story spiritually dangerous. Heaven was not tempted by ugliness. It was tempted by something real, radiant, created, but forbidden in that direction. Desire here is not random lust alone. It is transgression born from crossing categories. Beings of one realm reaching into another, not with blessing, but with appetite. And appetite becomes catastrophic when it tries to possess what it was only meant to witness. Or the fall begins when wonder loses humility and starts reaching with hands instead of reverence. When admiration becomes entitlement, even heaven's creatures can begin moving toward ruin without naming it ruin. But why would a being of heaven want what is lower, denser, mortal? That is the real question. Perhaps because the human world contained something the heavenly realm did not. Vulnerability, change, touch, blood, birth, time, longing inside limitation. Human existence is fragile, but it is also intimate in a way pure spirit is not. Flesh suffers, but it also feels. It ages, breaks, desires, clings, trembles, and creates life through union. To a being made of power and distance, that may have seemed not inferior, but intoxicating. Not because humanity was greater than heaven, but because embodied existence carried a form of immediacy that spirit could observe without ever naturally entering. And what cannot be naturally entered becomes more tempting when reverence begins to decay. Distance then stops feeling sacred and starts feeling unbearable. The body becomes not merely visible, but magnetic. Mortality itself begins to look less like weakness and more like forbidden intensity. Hell understands this pattern perfectly. The fall rarely begins with wanting something ugly. It begins with wanting something beautiful in the wrong way. That is what makes desire so dangerous. It can make violation feel almost sacred. It can dress appetite in wonder. It can make a boundary feel cruel simply because what lies beyond it appears radiant. Hell does not need evil to look monstrous. She only needs it to look justified by longing. And once that happens, the soul begins to reinterpret restraint as oppression, distance as deprivation, command as limitation. The forbidden becomes desirable not because it is dark, but because it seems to promise completion. That is how a heavenly being can fall without first hating heaven. It only needs to start wanting something else more. Once longing becomes its own authority, collapse is already underway. The mind begins baptizing appetite as destiny, and from there the descent becomes almost indistinguishable from devotion. Heaven sees the tragedy differently. The problem was never beauty itself. Human beauty was created, good and real. The problem was that beauty was approached without order, without permission, without holiness, and without the distance required to keep love from collapsing into possession. Heaven's sorrow is that desire was not governed by truth. It crossed from admiration into invasion, from recognition into consumption. The women in the story are not symbols of evil. They are the point where heavenly disorder reaches into human innocence, and that is why this moment becomes so grave. Because when a higher order abandons its own form and reaches downward through appetite, the violation does not remain private. It tears the structure of worlds. It turns beauty into a site of fracture instead of blessing. What should have remained radiant within its own order becomes burdened by crossing, power, and contamination. That is why heaven grieves here, not only for law broken, but for harmony wounded. And this is why it became a point of no return. Not because desire itself is unforgivable, but because this desire altered the boundary between realms. Once heavenly beings entered the human world through appetite, they did not simply commit a personal act. They changed the structure of relationship between heaven, earth, body, and power. The crossing produced corruption larger than the moment itself. Knowledge moved where it should not move. Power entered flesh in the wrong way. Human history became entangled with something it was not built to carry. The ancient imagination treats this not as romance, but as contamination. A line once crossed too deeply to be undone by regret alone. Because some acts do not merely break rules, they rewrite reality after themselves. And once reality is rewritten, innocence cannot simply be restored by wishing it back. The fall becomes structural. The damage outlives the desire that caused it. The world itself begins carrying consequences far heavier than the original act. Maybe that is the deeper warning hidden inside the story. The real danger is not desire alone. It is desire without rightful form. Desire that refuses its limits. Desire that looks at another world, another body, another being, and says, I want access, even if access destroys the order that protects both of us. That pattern did not end with angels. It lives in human beings now. Every time longing loses reverence, every time appetite seeks possession more than communion, every time power reaches for intimacy without holiness, the same distortion repeats on a smaller scale. The story survives because it is not only about fallen beings then. It is about the ancient structure of temptation itself. It is about what happens when wanting becomes more sacred than wisdom. When desire no longer asks whether something is given, but only whether it can be taken, corruption has already begun to feel natural. So why did angels desire human women? Maybe because humanity carried a form of beauty that could be seen from heaven, but not rightfully taken into heaven's grasp. Maybe because embodied life held a mystery that spirit could admire but not possess without falling. Maybe because the greatest temptations are not always toward what is ugly, but toward what is beautiful outside its proper order. And maybe that is why this story still disturbs us, because it suggests that the point of no return begins when desire stops asking what is holy and starts asking only what is possible. The moment appetite becomes stronger than reverence, even beings of light can become agents of ruin. And that possibility is terrifying precisely because it feels so close to the logic of every human fall. We rarely begin by wanting evil. We begin by wanting something luminous without accepting the form that should govern how it is approached. Perhaps that is why the story was never preserved merely to shock. It was preserved to warn, to show that power does not protect a being from corruption when desire becomes disordered, to show that nearness to heaven is not the same as being incapable of ruin, and to show that some falls are irreversible because they are not accidents of weakness, but chosen crossings into what was never meant to be touched that way. The tragedy is not only that angels desired, it is that they desired without obedience, without restraint, and without the humility to remain within the form they had been given. And when a being rejects its proper order in the name of longing, what follows is not freedom. It is fracture. It is the collapse that comes when beauty is pursued without truth. It is the silence that follows after radiance has been turned against the very order that made it beautiful. See you in the next video, where the questions only get darker